Three teenagers were brutally murdered while camping near a serene Finnish lake. Their killer vanished into the night. Over 60 years later, the case still haunts a nation. No weapon, no answers, just blood, whispers, and the secrets buried in the woods. Some say it was a crime of passion. Others believe it was an act of espionage. Was the killer a jealous boyfriend, a Soviet spy, or a madman hiding in plain sight? The Lake Bodom murders, Finland's most terrifying unsolved crime. Welcome back to Far From Fiction, the true crime series from the Friday Night Campfire Stories YouTube channel, where real-life horror is always stranger than anything we could ever make up. If you love unsolved mysteries, dark history, and chilling theories, you have found your people. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and if you're feeling brave, be sure to stick around to the end of this video. Because what happened at Lake Bodom isn't just a story, it's a nightmare that never woke up. Let's begin. It was supposed to be an unforgettable start to the summer. Four teenagers, young, free, and full of life, set off for a weekend camping trip by the beautiful shores of Lake Bodom in southern Finland. What followed would become one of the most chilling and unsolved mass murders in Nordic history. On the evening of June 4th, 1960, the group pitched a small two-person tent on the lake's edge. The plan was simple: swim, relax, spend the night under the stars, but by morning, only one would still be alive. Mila Bjorklund, age 15. A soft-spoken, kind-hearted teenager with a gentle presence. She had recently started dating one of the other campers, and the two were practically inseparable. Mila had been looking forward to the trip as a chance to relax and spend time with her boyfriend, away from the pressures of school and everyday life. Anja Tulikki-Maki. She was also 15, and she was Mila's close friend. She was described as a bright, adventurous, and always ready for a laugh and a new experience. Anja had known Mila for years, and the two often spent time together outside of school. She recently had just begun spending more time with the group and was excited to join the getaway. Seppo Boisman. He was the oldest of the group at 18 years old. He was confident and athletic. He was known around town for his outgoing personality and charm. He was reportedly the one to suggest the camping trip, a chance to unwind before summer responsibilities set in. Nils Gustafsson. Also 18, and he was Seppo's friend who joined in the group as the fourth camper. On the surface, Nils was a typical teen, relaxed, friendly, and eager to escape into the wild for the weekend. Who were these teens before they became victims? What secrets were buried amongst Lake Bodom? And what happened during those shadowy hours before dawn? According to surviving accounts and a few distant witnesses, the group arrived at Lake Bodom during the day on June 4th. By evening, they had pitched their tents about 50 meters away from the lake's edge, near a lightly wooded area. Sometime around midnight, a group of local boys fishing nearby reported seeing the teens relaxing and chatting. One claimed he saw the silhouette of a figure lurking in the trees, watching the tent from a distance, but dismissed it as his imagination. This was the last known sighting of the group before everything changed. What happened in those early morning hours remains the greatest mystery in Finnish criminal history. Sometime between 4 and 6 a.m., the tent was attacked from outside. The killer was using what was believed to be a knife and a blunt object. They slashed through the tent's fabric while the teens were sleeping, and they never had a chance. Milo was found partially undressed outside the tent. She had been stabbed multiple times, far more than the others. Some investigators believe that she may have been dragged from the tent while she was still alive. The violence against her was personal, brutal, and possibly sexual in nature. Seppo was found inside the tent, his body crushed, stabbed repeatedly, His injuries suggest that he was beaten with a heavy object, possibly a rock, before being stabbed. Anja, also inside the tent, suffered a similar fate. She was stabbed several times in the chest and face, her wound suggesting a fast, frenzied attack. And then there was Nils, the only one left alive. He was found lying on the ground, dazed and injured, with a broken jaw, facial fractures, and a concussion. His shoes were missing, and his clothes were bloodied, but unlike the others, he survived. The bodies were discovered later that morning, June 5th, by two bird watchers who stumbled upon the gruesome scene. They saw the collapsed tent, bloodstains in the grass, and barely conscious Nils Gustafsson lying nearby. The bird watchers alerted the police immediately, but in a tragic fumble, the crime scene was never secured. Before forensics could be gathered, dozens of onlookers, including reporters and curious locals, trampled through the area, potentially destroying crucial evidence to the case. Authorities were baffled. There was no murder weapon, no clear motive, and with their only witness suffering from memory loss and head trauma, the truth slipped through their fingers. To this day, the exact events that took place between 4 and 6 a.m. on that peaceful lakeside shore remains lost in time. In the hours and days that followed the brutal murders at Lake Bodom, one question echoed across Finland. How did one teenager survive the attack that slaughtered 3 others in the same exact tent? That teenager was Nils Gustafsson, the lone survivor. He had no clear memory of the attack. His face was swollen and bloodied, and he was found lying outside the tent with injuries that, at first glance, seemed consistent with an assault. But suspicion started to grow. Over time, investigators began to wonder, could Nils have been the killer all along? His wounds, while severe, weren't as fatal as those suffered by the others. In fact, some experts believed his injuries could have been self-inflicted or even staged. The theory was dark, a jealous rage sparked by a possible love triangle between Nils and Mila, his girlfriend, possibly due to flirting or infidelity that night. Maybe Seppo and Anja said something, maybe tensions rose, maybe Nils just snapped. He stabbed his friends in a blind fury, then staggers away, smashing his face with a rock to fake an attack, collapsing into the grass, waiting for someone to find him. It sounds outlandish, of course, but in 2004, 44 years after the murders, Finnish authorities agreed. Nearly half a century after the massacre, Nils was arrested and charged with 3 counts of murder. Prosecutors claimed DNA evidence and inconsistencies in his old statements supported their theories. They alleged he killed his friends in a drunken rage and then staged the crime scene. The public was stunned. The forgotten horrors of Lake Bodom was back in the headlines, and the quiet survivor that night was now painted as a cold-blooded killer. But the deeper that the courts dug, the more the case began to fall apart. First, there was no murder weapon. Nothing linked Nils physically to a knife or the blunt object used. Second, none of the supposed DNA evidence was actually ever usable. Much of it had been degraded to beyond the point of reliability. And third, Nils' injuries were severe: a broken jaw, multiple facial fractures, bruising consistent with being kicked in the face. A man who inflicts that kind of damage on himself on purpose is not just rare, but it's almost unheard of. Expert witnesses testified that the pattern of severity of Nils' injuries aligned far more closely with a real attack than self-inflicted wounds. There was no motive, no hard evidence, and the so-called confession was non-existent. In 2005, Nils Gustafsson was acquitted on all charges. The Finnish courts declared there was insufficient evidence to support any of the claims that were made against him. He walked free, but the stain on his name and the trauma of being accused of killing his closest friends never quite washed away. 3 teenagers were slaughtered by someone, Someone who vanished without a trace, leaving behind no murder weapon, no fingerprints, and no confession. But over the years, a handful of suspects and theories have emerged from the shadows. Some feel plausible, others feel like a nightmare whispered around campfires. Number 1. The Man in Black. In the early hours of June 5, 1960, the same morning the murders occurred, multiple witnesses reported seeing a strange man walking near the lake. He was dressed in black, unkempt, but he moved with urgency and avoided eye contact. One witness claims that he saw him walking away from the crime scene, limping. Police never identified him. He was never seen again. But for some, the Man in Black has become the phantom killer of Lake Bodom, Finland's own boogeyman. Then there's Hans Osman, the KGB theory. Perhaps the most chilling and plausible suspect. A former German national moved to Finland. Osman was rumored to have worked with the Soviet intelligence during the Cold War. And in the morning of June 6, 1960, the day after the murders, he walked into Helsinki Surgical Hospital covered in blood. His fingernails had dirt under them, and he appeared nervous or agitated. Hospital staff were so disturbed they called the police, but nothing came from it. Even stranger, he allegedly changed his name, shaved his head, and became extremely reclusive in the years that followed. Rumors swirled that he confessed to the murders on his deathbed, but no official record of the confession has ever existed. Some believe that he was protected because of his ties to the intelligence works. Others think that he was simply paranoid, recluse, and in the wrong place at the wrong time. Then there's the local lunatic, Pentti Soinman. Another theory focuses on a man named Pentti, a violent criminal history of assault and mental illness. He was in prison multiple times, and according to prison records, he confessed to the Lake Bodom murders to a fellow inmate. But that's where things get murky. Pentti later took his own life in prison, and no physical evidence ever tied him to the scene. His confession was just hearsay, but in a case like this, that might be the closest thing to a clue. Then there's the thought that it was a random drifter. Others believe that it was a stranger, a vagrant, a drifter walking through the woods who stumbled upon the teen's tent and without reason or warning unleashed unimaginable violence. The remoteness of the area, combined with the chaotic nature of the crime, supports this theory. No motive, no connection, just a senseless act committed by someone who disappeared in the wilderness, never to be seen again. But if that's true, why did they take their motorcycle keys? Why did they stage the crime scene? And why target the head of the victims with such focused rage? In the 1990s and early 2000s, a new wave of speculation took hold. Could the Lake Bodom murders have been part of something darker, something ritualistic? The placement of the victims, the missing keys, the fact that the murder weapon was never found. Some conspiracy theorists and local occult investigators believe the killings had the hallmarks of a ritual sacrifice, especially Mila, who was attacked far more violently than the others. Of course, there is no solid evidence of this, but when the case remains unsolved for 60 years, the lines between logic and legend begins to blur. Despite the decades of speculation, surveillance, arrest, and reinvestigations, the truth remains buried in the soil of Lake Bodom. No one has ever been convicted, no new suspects have ever emerged, and the forest has remained eerily silent. So who killed the teenagers that night? A jealous boyfriend, a Cold War spy, a drifter, or even a demon? Whatever the answer is, someone walked away from that tent in 1960 and took a dark secret with them. After looking through every detail, every crack in the case, every failed theory and dead end, I keep coming back to one name: Hans Osman. I believe that Hans was the man who murdered the 3 teenagers that night at Lake Bodom. And here's why I think that that's the case. It was just after midnight, the forest was silent, and 4 teens are inside the tent, settling down after a night of laughter, music, and whispers. But someone is watching. From the shadows beyond the tree line, a man stands, dressed in black, nearly blending in with the trees. His breath is steady, his eyes fixed on the tent. He's been here before. Hans was no stranger to surveillance. Former German soldier, alleged Soviet informant, a man trained in the art of secrecy. We don't know why he chose the teens. Was it random? Was it targeted? Or did something inside him just snap? Sometime between 4 and 6 a.m., he moves in. He unzips the tent with precision, maybe even cuts it open to disorient them. And then, with a heavy, blunt object, possibly a rock or a pipe, he attacks. One by one, the teens are assaulted, sleepy, confused, defenseless. Seppo and Anja, lying side by side, are struck multiple times in the head. Mila tried to escape, or maybe scream. She was just dragged from the tent and brutally beaten. The violence against her seems personal for some reason. Excessive, almost ritualistic. And Nils, maybe he fights back. Maybe he hits Hans hard enough to knock them both down. Nils suffered a broken jaw, a concussion, and then passes out. Hans, rattled but composed, wipes the blood from his hands and cleans up what he can. He takes the motorcycle keys, possibly as a trophy or to slow down anyone who might try to flee. He vanishes in the woods, and just hours later, he shows up at a hospital in Helsinki, blood-stained, erratic, and afraid. Hospital staff remembers him. Police are notified, but no arrests are made. Hans disappears into a quiet life, changes his name, shaves his head, avoids all media attention. Some say he even confessed before his death. Others say he took his secret to the grave. It's not a perfect theory. There are gaps. There is no weapon. There's no hard proof. But of all the suspects, only one showed up in the hospital shortly after the attacks, covered in blood. Only one has ties to espionage and a life of secrecy, and only one walked away like nothing ever happened. As always, I'm not an investigator, and I wasn't part of the case, so this is just my opinion, but I would definitely love to hear what you thought happened at Lake Bodom that night in 1960 in the comments below. 3 young lives were stolen that summer morning in 1960. Seppo Boisman, Mila Bjorklund, and Anja Tuliki Maki. They were son and daughters, best friends, and classmates. They had dreams of love, of travel, of simple happiness. And all of that was taken by someone who never looked them in the eyes again. In a world so quick to sensationalize murders, it's easy to forget that behind every cold case are real people, real lives that never got to finish their stories. They weren't just victims, they were teenagers. On a camping trip, laughing under the stars one moment and gone the next. And while we may never know the full truth of what happened at Lake Bodom, what we can do is remember. Remember who they were. Remember that behind every headline is a human being. And remember that life is fragile, unexpected, unpredictable, and sometimes heartbreakingly short. Let their stories remind us to hold on to the ones we love, to live boldly, to speak of truth, and never take a single sunrise for granted. Seppo, Mila, Anja, you deserve so much better. We carry your memory forward so that your lives are never defined by your last day, but the light you left behind. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you guys did enjoy this new episode of Far From Fiction. If you're moved to, if you feel connected to those 3 young souls, please consider subscribing and help me continue to give the voice to the voiceless and tell stories that should never be forgotten. Here on the Friday Night Campfire Stories, I release 3 full-length videos each week. Every Monday, Echoes of the Past, my paranormal history and haunting series. Wednesdays, Far From Fiction, my true crime series, just like what you watched today. And Friday nights, the namesake of the channel, the Friday Night Campfire Stories, where I share a chapter from one of my original stories with you guys each and every Friday. If any of these series pique your interest, I ask you kindly to subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of August, and I really need your help to get there. But that will do it for today. And as always, thank you for spending a little bit of your evening here with me.